The prairie was quiet, too quiet. Just the wind, dry and scratchy, scraping ash across cracked earth. Charred tree stumps poked from the ground like broken ribs. Smoke from a fire long extinguished still lingered in the bones of the land. Over the ridge, beneath a pale sky smeared in ash-gray clouds, a black figure moved slowly through the stillness. Clara Morgan walked with her head down, her long black veil fluttering behind her like a mourning flag. In one hand she carried a tin box rusted at the seams. She reached the base of a dry juniper tree and knelt with stiff joints. The dirt here was brittle, resisting her fingers as she dug a shallow grave with her hands, grit caked beneath her nails. With care she placed the box, a locket inside, into the earth. "I have no more to give," she whispered, her voice dry as the dust. She didn't cry anymore. Not after all she'd lost. Her husband, Matthew, had died in a cattle raid 2 winters ago, scalped and left in the cold. They never found the horse. And their baby boy, sweet Jacob, was gone too. Fever in the dead of a December night. She'd held him against her chest until his body turned cold and limp. Since then, the cabin had stood empty of laughter, only creaking floorboards and ghosts. Townsfolk called her cursed. Some said she brought bad luck. Clara didn't fight. Let them believe what they wanted. She didn't need anyone. She had her goats, her garden, her shotgun. She could survive, and surviving was enough. That morning, she took the mule cart down to the arroyo, hoping for a trickle of water. The land had been dry for weeks. The wind picked up as she climbed down into the wash, her boots crunching over pale gravel. She stooped to check a puddle behind the rocks, and that's when she heard it, a low, broken groan. She straightened, heart thumping. For a moment she thought it might be an animal, maybe a wounded coyote. But then she saw movement. A twitch of limbs behind a scrub of brittle sage. Clara stepped closer, breath tight in her throat. A boy. No more than 9, maybe 10. Apache by the look of him. His face was smeared with blood and dirt, his long dark hair tangled and stuck to his cheek. A bullet wound tore through his side, and his shirt, once brown, was stained black-red. An arrowhead necklace hung around his neck, catching a glint of light. He was barely breathing, each breath shallow and ragged. His eyes fluttered open as she crouched near. They were black as night and filled with terror. He flinched, tried to crawl away, but collapsed with a strangled cry. Clara froze. Her hand hovered inches from his shoulder. Her mind was flashing her baby boy in the bed, the cold cloth on his forehead, the helplessness, the way his tiny chest stopped moving. This child was someone else's son, and still the same. She looked at the open sky, the burning wind, the distance between her and anything that could save him. No one would come for this boy. If she left him here, the coyotes would have him before morning. "You're just a child," she said quietly. "I can't walk away again." The sky growled with thunder. Rain was coming. And the boy wouldn't survive a storm, not in this ditch. Clara reached down and pressed her hand to his forehead, burning. His lips were cracked, and his body, so light in her arms it scared her. She hauled him up, gritting her teeth, muscles straining as she dragged him toward the mule cart. He moaned again but didn't fight. She laid him on a tattered quilt, wrapped her coat over him, and climbed onto the seat, snapping the reins. The first drops of rain slapped the dirt as she urged the mule forward. The wind howled now, twisting through the trees like voices. Clara leaned over the reins, eyes narrowed, mud splashing up her skirts as the wheels bumped and skidded through the rising storm. Behind her, the boy made a soft whimper that made her chest ache. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know if he'd live, but she knew she couldn't lose another child. Not today. And so she rode into the rain, with death behind her and something fragile in her arms, something like hope. The rain passed that night, leaving behind a world soaked and trembling. Water dripped from the eaves of the cabin, and steam rose from the earth like breath from an old beast. Inside, the boy lay still on Clara's bed, wrapped in every blanket. She owned he hadn't moved since she'd dragged him in. Just fever dreams and shallow breaths. Clara kept the fire going all night. She sat beside him, wiping his forehead with a wet rag, fingers trembling every time he shuddered. She cleaned the wound as best she could, boiled water, ground herbs, whispered prayers to a god she no longer trusted. She didn't expect him to survive, but he did. Day after day passed in silence. He murmured strange words in his sleep, guttural, melodic phrases that stirred something in her chest. Sometimes she caught a single word repeated over and over. Aina. It took her 3 nights to understand. Aina, mother. She watched him in the firelight. Lips cracked, eyes fluttering beneath the lids, calling for a mother who wasn't coming. She should have been numb by now. But that word chipped at her armor like rain on rusted steel. By the end of the week, he opened his eyes. Dark, alert, fevered, but alive. He didn't speak English. She didn't speak Apache. But he didn't flinch. From her touch, that was enough. Clara began talking to him anyway. One-sided conversations while mending a shirt or stirring stew. "You remind me of someone," she told him one night, voice barely above a whisper. "He had your eyes. He liked goats, too. I think he would have been kind." The boy watched her without speaking, but his gaze softened, and when she handed him broth, he took it without hesitation. Life outside didn't stop. The wolves came first. Distant howls that circled closer with every nightfall. Then the coyotes scraping against the boards at night, sniffing for weakness. One morning she found one of the goats ripped open, blood painting the dirt red. A mountain lion, judging by the tracks. The night it returned, Clara was asleep in her rocking chair, rifle across her lap. The boy, barefoot and wrapped in her old coat, hobbled to the door. He stood still, eyes narrowed, then growled something sharp and harsh in Apache. The growl startled the lion. It vanished into the trees without a sound. She blinked at him. "You've lived through more than I have, haven't you?" He didn't answer. But he turned, sat beside her, and held the rifle while she made coffee. Each day he grew a little stronger. She made a sling for his arm. He mimicked her and rapped, his own ribs tight with old cloth. His hands were quick, precise. She realized then this boy had survived before. Someone had taught him how to live, to endure. But now those people were gone. One afternoon, while he napped on the floor by the fire, Clara climbed to the loft. She hadn't been up there since the night Jacob died. Dust coated everything: wooden toys, a cradle, the tiny shirts she couldn't bear to throw away. She sat with them in her lap, the soft cotton folding in her hands like memory itself. She thought about offering one to the boy. He had nothing. His shirt was torn, and winter was coming, but her fingers froze. Her breath hitched. She could still see Jacob, pale and trembling, wrapped in that same little shirt. She'd rocked him through the fever, humming the only lullaby she remembered, until the moment the warmth left his skin. Her hands shook as she stood. The lantern dropped from her grip and shattered on the floor. Flames licked up the edge of a blanket, but she stamped them out, heart racing, breath ragged. She fell to her knees and cried for the first time in months. Cried until her throat hurt and her fingers curled into the floorboards. And when she finally raised her head, she wasn't alone. The boy stood in the doorway, quiet and still, watching. He didn't ask anything. He just stepped forward, picked up the small cotton shirt, and placed it gently in her lap. He didn't need to speak. The gesture was enough. That night, Clara sat by the fire with him at her side. She took a comb and gently began brushing out the tangles in his long black hair. He winced at first, but didn't pull away. Tiny beads, woven into the strands, clinked softly. Trinkets from his people. She didn't ask what they meant. She just untangled them with care. "You need a name," she said softly. "Something strong. Something that fits." He blinked at her. She looked at the fireplace, the ash still swirling from the broken lantern. "Ash," she decided. "That's what's left after everything burns, and still warm, still here." Ash looked at her, then nodded once. That night, for the first time in months, Clara didn't lock her bedroom door. She slept beside the hearth, wrapped in her blanket, her rifle within reach, but untouched. The wolves still howled, and the wind still blew, but something in the cabin had shifted. They were no longer just 2 broken souls under the same roof. They were something more, something like family. The knock on the door wasn't frantic. It was measured, confident. the kind of knock that didn't ask permission, it claimed presence. Clara froze mid-step, the wooden ladle trembling in her hand. Ash was already gone, having heard the horses before she did. He slipped beneath the floorboards like a ghost, breath shallow, body trembling, a small knife clenched in his palm. Clara opened the door slowly. 3 men stood on her porch, their dust-covered hats tipped low, coats stiff with trail grit. Guns hung from their belts like promises. The tallest of them grinned with too many teeth. "Evenin', ma'am," he said. "We're looking for someone." She didn't answer. The man gestured toward the hills behind them. "There was a skirmish. Apache camp wiped out. Few kids ran. Word is one of 'em's the son of Chief Natani. There's a bounty on him." Clara kept her face blank. "I haven't seen anyone." "You sure?" the second one asked. "Pretty little boy. Dark skin, long hair. Might be bleedin'. Hard to miss. I live alone," Clara said. Her voice didn't shake. "Just goats and a sick mule." The third man stepped past the doorframe without asking. He started sniffing around the cabin, eyes dragging across the floorboards, the hearth, the shelves. Clara's fingers inched toward the rifle resting against the wall. "We'll take a look," the toothy one said, "just to be sure. No harm." In that, she moved aside, jaw locked. They walked slow, eyes alert. One of them picked up a bowl of stew, sniffed it, and drank it straight from the rim. "She eats well for someone alone," he muttered. The other stepped over the Rugash's hiding place and paused. Time froze, a breath. Then he turned. "Away. Nothing here," he said. "Let's go. She ain't got it in her to lie." The leader gave her a final long look. "If you're lying, widow, we'll know, and we'll come back." They rode off in a cloud of dust. Clara didn't exhale until their shadows vanished into the trees. Ash climbed out from the floor slowly. His hands were shaking. His eyes wide. Clara wiped her brow and picked up her shotgun. "They'll be back." That night she didn't sleep. She sat by the window with her shotgun across her knees, every creak of the house making her flinch. Ash curled on a blanket near the hearth, too tense to rest. The air smelled wrong, damp, metallic. Near dawn, she stepped outside, rifle raised, senses sharp. That's when she saw it. Just beyond the tree line, one of the bounty hunters lay face down in the dirt. His throat was slit from ear to ear. Flies already swarmed the wound. His gun was gone. His boots, too. Clara's breath caught. And then she saw the figure. At the top of the bluff, half hidden by the early morning mist, stood a tall native man, bare-chested, face streaked with black ochre, a feather braided into his hair. He stared directly at her, unmoving, unreadable. When she blinked, he was gone. She stepped back into the cabin, heart pounding. Ash was awake. He'd seen the body, seen the man. His lips parted. "Tall elk," he whispered. "My uncle?" Clara stared at him. It was the first time he'd spoken to her in full English. His voice was quiet, low, like he was still unsure if he had the right to use it. "He came for me," Ash said. "He's here to take me home." A lump formed in Clara's throat. She looked at the boy, at the child she had nursed back from death, taught to wrap his ribs, brushed clean, named Ash, and in that moment she realized something had changed. Not just the boy, she didn't say anything for a long time. Then she walked to the loft, opened the cedar chest, and pulled out the last thing she'd never let go of. A faded blue baby blanket. She brought it down, unfolded it, and wrapped it gently around Ash's shoulders. "He's your family," she said, "but so am I." Ash nodded slowly, and she could see it in his eyes. He understood both truths at once. That evening, just before sunset, the remaining 2 bounty hunters returned. They didn't knock this time. They rode up fast, guns drawn, anger in every movement. Clara saw them from the window and didn't hesitate. She loaded the shotgun, stood in the doorway, and waited. Ash crouched by the back wall, eyes darting. He whispered a plan he could slip through the goat pen and run, draw them off. She just had to buy him a few minutes. Clara shook her head. "They won't let you run, not without blood." The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the yard. Fog crept in from the creek bed, curling around fence posts like fingers. Clara stepped out onto the porch, veil gone, replaced by a red scarf tied tightly around her throat. "I told you," she said calmly. "I live alone," the leader sneered. "You're a damn liar." He raised his gun. From the trees, a crow screamed, and from the ridge a shadow moved. Tall Elk watched it all, unmoving, like a ghost made of vengeance, waiting for the blood to begin. The shot cracked through the dusk like the sky itself had split open. Clara fired first. The recoil kicked hard into her shoulder, but the closest bounty hunter dropped like a sack of grain, chest blooming red. The second man ducked behind the rain barrel and returned fire. The blast tore through Clara's sleeve, grazing her arm. She staggered but didn't fall. Ash darted from the side of the cabin. His feet barely touched the ground. His knife was small, but his scream was loud, desperate, raw. He leapt toward the second man, who turned just in time to raise his revolver. The gunshot echoed across the valley. Ash dropped to his knees. The knife clattered from his hand as he slumped forward, both hands clutching his stomach. Blood spilled between his fingers, too fast, too dark. Clara screamed and ran to him, dropping her shotgun on the porch as she fell beside him, arms catching his crumpled body. Behind them, a shadow moved. Tall Elk stepped from the trees with silent rage. His tomahawk gleamed once in the firelight before it sank deep into the bounty hunter's neck. The man gurgled once, then dropped. The wind died. Silence settled, like snow. Clara pressed her hands against Ash's wound, crying his name, rocking him gently, her hair falling into his face. His small hands reached up and touched her cheek. His eyes blinked slowly, lashes wet with tears. "You were my mother," he whispered, "in every way that mattered." Then he exhaled. A soft, trembling breath, the last one. Clara held him, motionless, forehead pressed to his. Her tears soaked his skin. She didn't move for a long time. The dirt beneath them turned red. Her mouth opened to scream, but what came out wasn't rage or fear. It was grief, the kind that cracked mountains, the kind that couldn't be buried. But in her eyes something shifted. Not just pain, purpose. 3 days later the sun broke through the clouds. Clara stood once more beneath the juniper tree, the same one where she'd buried the locket, the same place she'd whispered she had nothing left to give. This time she dug with her hands again, only slower. Tall Elk stood nearby, watching, silently, a respectful distance away. She laid Ash to rest with her child's blanket wrapped around him, the arrowhead necklace still tied to his neck. Her palms, stained with dirt and blood, pressed the earth down firm. She took a flat stone from her bag and carved a single word into it. "Son." Tall Elk stepped forward and placed a bundle of sage on the grave. Then he nodded, not goodbye, something deeper, a recognition. They didn't speak. Clara returned to the cabin only once after that. She packed a saddlebag with what she needed: dried meat, matches, her husband's knife, the tin box of ashes. She didn't take the shotgun. She paused at the door, looked back once, the home she had mourned in, loved in, lost everything in. Then she stepped into the morning light. She climbed onto the mule, rode toward the mountains where Tall Elk waited at the edge of the pines. They said nothing, just turned their backs to the past and faced the rising sun. As they rode side by side through the high grass, Clara's red scarf danced behind her in the wind. Her voice echoed soft, steady. "I buried 2 children beneath this sky. One was born of me, the other chose me." And in that sentence there was peace, not full, but enough to ride forward. If this story touched you, if you've ever loved and lost and dared to love again, then like, comment, and subscribe. Because sometimes family isn't blood, it's choice.